This is the story of a man named Moses, a man who started as a baby hidden in a basket, raised as royalty in Egypt, and later became the leader of an entire nation. It is a story filled with miracles, challenges, and faith, from slavery to freedom, from fear to courage, from Egypt to the promised land. Moses wasn't a perfect man. He had doubts, he made mistakes, and he ran from responsibility. But through it all, he learned to trust God and walk in obedience. And that's what makes his story so powerful, because it is not just a story from the past. It's a story that still speaks to us today. Long ago, the Israelites were living in Egypt. At first, things were good. Joseph, an Israelite, had saved Egypt from a great famine and earned respect. But after Joseph died, a new Pharaoh came to power, one who didn't know Joseph. This new Pharaoh saw the growing number of Israelites and felt threatened, so he made them slaves. The Israelites were forced to work hard, building cities and doing heavy labor under cruel conditions. Yet even in slavery, they continued to grow in number. This made Pharaoh even more afraid. So he gave a horrific order. The order says that every baby boy born to the Israelites must be thrown into the Nile River and killed. But one mother refused to let that happen. She gave birth to a baby boy and hid him for 3 months. When she couldn't hide him any longer, she made a waterproof basket, placed her baby inside, and gently set it among the reeds of the Nile. That baby's sister, Miriam, watched from a distance. Then something incredible happened. Pharaoh's own daughter came to bathe at the river. She spotted the basket, opened it, and saw the crying baby. She felt compassion. Even though she knew he was a Hebrew child, she chose to adopt him. She named him Moses, which means drawn out of the water. Moses' own mother was hired to nurse him, without Pharaoh's daughter, knowing she was the real mother. Moses grew up in the palace, raised as Egyptian royalty. Moses knew he wasn't really Egyptian. He knew his people were slaves. One day he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew man. Anger rose inside Moses. He looked around to make sure no one was watching, and then he struck the Egyptian and killed him. He hid the body in the sand. But the next day he saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He tried to break up the fight, but one of them said, "Who made you ruler over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was terrified. Word had gotten out. Pharaoh found out too, and he wanted Moses dead. So Moses fled Egypt. He ran far into the wilderness to a land called Midian. There he helped some women at a well who were being bullied by shepherds. Their father, Jethro, invited Moses to stay with them. Eventually, Moses married one of Jethro's daughters, Zipporah. He became a shepherd and had children. For 40 years he lived a quiet life, far from Egypt. But God hadn't forgotten Moses, and God hadn't forgotten his people. One day, while Moses was tending sheep near Mount Horeb, he saw something strange. A bush was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. Curious, Moses went closer. Then a voice called out from the bush, "Moses, Moses, take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground." It was God. God told Moses he had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt. He had heard their cries, and now he was going to set them free, and he had chosen Moses to do it. Moses was shocked. "Who am I to go to Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the Israelites out of Egypt?" God replied, "I will be with you." Still, Moses had doubts. What if they don't believe me? What if they ask, "Who sent me?" God said, "Tell them I am who I am sent you." He also gave Moses miraculous signs to perform, turning his staff into a snake, making his hand leprous, and healing it again. But Moses still wasn't confident. He said, "I'm not a good speaker. I've never been good with words." So God allowed Moses' brother Aaron to go with him and speak for him. Together Moses returned to Egypt. With Aaron by his side, he went to Pharaoh and delivered God's message. "Let my people go so they may worship me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh refused. Instead, he made the Israelites work even harder. He said, "They're lazy. That's why they want time off to worship." The Israelites turned on Moses. "You've made things worse." Moses cried out to God. God reassured him. "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh." Then came the 10 plagues, powerful signs from God to show Pharaoh that he was serious. Now these plagues were pretty intense and included things like frogs, locusts, and boils. But the Pharaoh still wouldn't let the Israelites go until God did his most famous trick yet, parting the Red Sea so Moses and company could escape. All right, let's get into the first plague. While Moses is hanging out with God, he learns that he'll be performing these plagues. One of them will be turning water into blood, which will happen when he throws his staff down on the ground. Okay, first of all, imagine being around when this happens. Seeing your drinking water turn into something that looks like a bloody massacre. Definitely a little unnerving. And second of all, imagine being Moses and having to throw your fancy golden staff down on the ground, knowing that you're about to make a ton of people very queasy. But either way, when Moses performs this first plague, it doesn't go over too well with the Pharaoh. He calls his wise men to figure out what's going on, and they're clueless. So the Pharaoh tells Moses to just go away. I mean, it's not like anyone wants to drink blood on purpose. So I can see why the Pharaoh thinks he's doing Moses a favor by telling him to leave. But Moses is persistent, and he tells the Pharaoh that unless he lets the Israelites go, bad things are going to keep happening. But the Pharaoh isn't having it. The next plague is frogs. And look, I love frogs. They're cute, they're green, and they have little froggy smiles. But if you have to listen to the sound of thousands of little frogs jumping around non-stop, you might start to hate them. Kind of like how listening to your annoying little brother play the recorder over and over again might make you want to smash it. But even after this plague, the Pharaoh still won't let the Israelites go. So the next plague is a little more intense, boils. Okay, now I don't know about you, but when I get a boil, it's painful, it's itchy, and it's kind of gross. It's definitely not something you want to be around, especially when everyone in Egypt has them. At this point, the Pharaoh is probably thinking, okay, I think I messed up a little bit. Maybe letting these people go wasn't such a good idea. But nope, still no dice. The fourth plague is swarms of flies, which gross me out because they land on you and crawl all over you. But this doesn't change the Pharaoh's mind either. So the fifth plague is hail. And look, I love a good hailstorm sometimes. It's refreshing, it's kind of fun to play in, and it can also destroy entire crops. Okay, I guess that last one's not so fun. Still, the Pharaoh doesn't budge. The sixth plague is locusts, which can devour everything in sight. I mean, they're kind of like really determined grasshoppers. And the seventh plague is darkness that lasts for 5 days. Look, I love a good movie night with some popcorn and my favorite blanket fort. But if I had to spend 5 whole days in the dark without any of my toys or distractions, I would probably go crazy. So you can see why this is enough to annoy someone like the Pharaoh. But nope, still no Israelites going free. And now things are getting really intense. The eighth plague is a mix of really bad things. First, there's hail and fire. Next, locusts come and devour everything in sight. Then there's even more darkness. And finally, a really bad stench. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hard. Then came the final plague, the most severe. God warned Moses. Every firstborn in Egypt would die. But God gave the Israelites a way to be spared. Each family was to kill a spotless lamb and place its blood on the doorpost of their home. That night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Every home without blood on the door lost its firstborn, including Pharaoh's own son. The Israelites were protected. The angel passed over their homes. Pharaoh was broken. He summoned Moses and said, "Go, leave, take your people and go." After 400 years in Egypt, the Israelites left. There were hundreds of thousands of them. God led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. But Pharaoh changed his mind again. He sent his army to bring them back. The Israelites found themselves trapped, the Red Sea in front of them, Pharaoh's army behind them. They panicked. "Why did you bring us here to die?" Moses told them, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." God told Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea, and then a miracle. The sea parted. Walls of water rose on both sides. A dry path opened through the middle. The Israelites walked through on dry ground. The Egyptian army followed. But when the last Israelite had crossed, God told Moses to stretch out his hand again. The waters came crashing down. Pharaoh's army was destroyed. The Israelites were free, truly free. Now the real journey began. The Israelites were headed to the land God had promised them, the promised land. But they didn't go in a straight line. They wandered through the wilderness. It was hot. It was dry. There was little food or water. The people started to complain. "Why did we leave Egypt? At least we had food there." God provided for them. He sent manna, bread from heaven, each morning. He gave them quail for meat. He brought water out of a rock. He even kept their clothes and sandals from wearing out. Still, they complained. At Mount Sinai, God called Moses to the mountain. There, he gave the 10 Commandments, laws to guide the people. Asterisk, do not worship other gods. Do not take God's name in vain. Honor your father and mother. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not kill. These were more than rules. They were the foundation of a new way of life. But while Moses was on the mountain, the people got impatient. They made a golden calf and began to worship it. Moses came down, saw what they had done, and smashed the tablets of stone in anger. God was furious, but Moses pleaded for the people. God showed mercy again. God led the Israelites with his presence, a cloud by day, fire by night. He gave them victories over enemies. He taught them to trust him, but again and again they doubted. When they finally reached the border of the promised land, Moses sent 12 spies to explore it. 10 came back afraid. "There are giants in the land. We can't win." Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, believed God could give them the land. The people sided with fear. They refused to enter. Because of this, God said they would wander for 40 years in the wilderness. A whole generation would die before the people would try again. Even Moses would not enter. He disobeyed God once by striking a rock instead of speaking to it, and God told him he would only see the land from a distance. As the 40 years came to an end, Moses gathered the people one last time. He reminded them of all God had done. He told them to obey God's laws. He warned them not to forget God when life got comfortable. He told them to choose life. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo. From there, God let him see the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. And there Moses died. He was 120 years old. God himself buried him, and to this day no one knows where his grave is. After Moses died, God chose Joshua to lead the people. He had been Moses' assistant and one of the faithful spies. Under Joshua's leadership, the people finally crossed the Jordan River. and entered the land God had promised. Moses wasn't there to see it with his eyes, but his faith and leadership made it possible. The story of Moses is more than a tale from ancient history. It's a journey of faith, a story of a man who doubted himself, made mistakes, but still chose to follow God. It's a reminder that no one is too broken, too scared, or too far gone to be used by God. Moses walked with God through deserts, through doubt, through impossible odds, and he left behind a legacy that still speaks today. What desert are you walking through? What is your Egypt? What is your promised land? Maybe, like Moses, you don't feel ready, but God says, I will be with you, so take the first step, like Moses did. From Egypt to the promised land, Moses' journey ended on a mountaintop, looking out over the land he had spent his life moving toward, a land flowing with promise, hope, and new beginnings. He didn't enter it himself, but he had done what he was called to do. He led a people out of bondage. He stood before kings. He brought down commandments from the mountain of God, and most importantly, he learned what it meant to trust not in his strength, but in God's. His life reminds us that the journey matters just as much as the destination. I hope this story from God's Word encouraged you today. Remember, these aren't just ancient stories. They're lessons for our lives right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and let me know in the comments which Bible story you'd like to see next. Don't forget to subscribe to join our growing family of Bible story lovers. Grace and peace to you.